All right, so now we have successfully set up our jumping exquisite corpse. We've got good focus, pretty good focus, even though it's a fast shutter. My camera is doing about 1/500th of a second, and the only reason her feet are a little bit blurry, and I chose such a dramatic pose, is it's actually a little bit like the end of a whip, which actually goes faster than the speed of sound and makes the cracking sound. It's because her knees were going up well within 1/500th of a second, but as she bent her knees while she was jumping, that makes her feet go a lot faster. So to get her feet in focus, I'd probably need about 1/800th of a second or so. But it gave me good balanced exposures. So now all I need to do is refine these and process them. And this is going to show us some of the capability of Photoshop. And this is actually, as silly as it looks, the process by which most magazine covers are made, by putting together the best parts of different exposures. So what I need to do is I'm going to use not the rectangular marquee tool, but what's called the lasso tool, which is just underneath it. And I'm going to first deal with the head, this layer right here. And what I want to do is lasso around the parts I want to keep. Careful not to cut into it. And this is why that teacher of mine said that getting good selections is the key to being good in Photoshop. And you'll see a lot of sloppy work done professionally, just because they're not good selections. So first I make kind of a rough selection around the head, like that. Then I can modify my selection. So if I want to subtract from it, I hold down Option, and you'll see a little minus sign appears next to the lasso. And then I can cut out portions of it. And if I need to add portions back in, I can always zoom in. It's just pixels, right? I hold down Shift, and I can add back into my selection. Now this is pretty labor intensive with a mouse. And so I first want to show you kind of the harder way to do it, which is this way. So I do a rough cut and then a more refined cut. And then I'll show you some of the other selection tools we can make use of to make this a little bit faster in Photoshop. And I just want his head. I don't want any of that green shirt. In fact, I don't need any of his neck at all because I'm using the neck from another exposure. But this is called refining your selection. We haven't done any color processing yet, or value processing, because first we want to just get the image from each layer that we want. Now we shot with a fairly open aperture, and you can see the different amount of focus on the bricks than on the face. And that's good. It helps the body and the details on the subject stand out a little bit. So there I cut in a little too much to the glasses, so I hold down Shift and I add back into my selection. So this is how we refine selections.
Where's the option button?
The option button, it's called Alt Option. It's between Control and Command, next to the space bar on a Macintosh. And these are all our special keys. Control, Command, and Option, and Shift, all in that one area. You'll find them on both sides of the keyboard for whether you're left-handed or right-handed. Okay, now when I have just the part of him I want, I have a few options. I can go up to the top and say Select Inverse, and that will select everything else in the whole frame except for that. And then I can hit Delete. Or something that I like to do a little bit more, because I don't like to delete information if I think I might need it later. So I go back to my original selection. I can make a duplicate of this selection only. And to make a duplicate, you can go up to Layer and say Duplicate Layer. But I want to duplicate just this selection. So the shortcut for that is Command J. So if I hit Command J, it gives me a new layer on top of the old layer. That's only my selection. So here's the old layer, and here's the new layer. Nice and crisp in how it's cut out. Okay, now I'm going to do it with the torso. But that's a lot of cutting out, right? So let's see if we can do some faster tools. So Photoshop has a few quick selection tools. So if you go underneath the lasso tool, you'll see what's called the quick selection tool. And this allows you to kind of just paint. And the computer is pretty smart. It will try to figure out when pixels are similar enough that it groups them together, and it will stop when it gets to an edge. It's called the quick selection tool. And if I want to add to this, I just keep painting. But look, if I go too far, now it's eaten up his whole arm. So I'm going to hit Command-Z, get back to before, and then I'm just going to delete chunks of it as I go. Paint, delete chunks. Up, lost his finger, Command-Z. But maybe I can get it up here. Nope. Maybe I can get it up here. Nope. So then, how do I subtract with the quick selection tool? If I hold down minus or option, it will subtract parts out. And some people get really good with this, but it is an inexact tool by nature. But for quick work, works very well. And hold down option if you need to minus out. And you can zoom in, and you can change the size of the quick selection. So for his fingers, I might want to narrow it down and get even a little bit smaller with the quick selection tool. But the problem is his fingers are a very similar value and color to that brick wall. So it's having trouble making the distinction. Now I can also augment that quick selection tool with the regular lasso tool. So with this, I can go in and just where I need to around the fingers, make better selections. Because the computer has a very hard time seeing as well as our eyes can see. And I can add in the things that the computer missed. Okay. So that's one quick selection tool. The other is called the magic wand. And the magic wand tool works through a tolerance system. So it's a little bit more controllable, but it takes a little bit longer than the quick selection tool. There we are. Okay. And the reason you get a lot of mistakes when you go too fast is when you use the quick selection tool, you'll not realize that it's taking out chunks that you actually want to keep. Like the face here, or this little bit of shirt. So I go in with my lasso and I make sure that those are safe. But for the big chunks, it does a pretty good job. Okay, so now I've got all that selected. I can hit delete. And except for some fine tuning here, which I can do with the lasso tool, because I think the quick selection is going to mess it up. Yep. I'm just going to quickly draw around. With the mouse, this is not the easiest thing. It's hard to be exact with the mouse. And so we actually have tablets that we'll use when we do a lot of fine selection work in our assignments. That makes it a little bit easier. but it's fun to play with. Okay. So now the legs, I'm going to use our last selection tool. And this is called the magic wand. So if you hold down on the quick selection tool underneath the lasso, you'll have kind of the different options. So the magic wand tool, it works in a tolerance. And the default tolerance is 32. And it's based on wherever you click, but you can also say, I want to sample like 5 by 5 pixels at 32 tolerance, and I want it to select all the pixels that are similar enough to be touching each other. Okay, so I'm on this layer with the legs, and I'm going to try to sample the bricks. So it selects all those bricks. And I can delete all of that out. But it left in the gray between the bricks. You see that? So instead, because these pants are pretty different than the bricks, I can up my tolerance, maybe to more like 58, something taller or bigger. And then it will be more forgiving. And you see, mostly it will only get the brick wall with just a few little dots that it will leave out. And then I can hit delete. But I can also augment that with the good old lasso tool, and I can add chunks. So I want to make sure it gets all of these stray bits. So we can get rid of those as well. Or select the inverse and copy it. So now if I turn off my other layers, you'll see that I'm selecting all this stuff around the legs. The lasso tool cut into her ankle just a little bit, so I'm going to hold down Option, use the magic, or the lasso just to delete that selection. And that's the only problem with these quick tools, you have to check the details. Okay, and then once I have that, again I have two options. I can just hit delete to erase it, or I can say select inverse. So it's actually selecting what I do want, and then I can duplicate it with Command J. And that puts it on its own layer. Then I just turn the other layer off. So now I have free floating legs. I add a torso, and I finish the head. Whoop, not that one, this one. And there I have an exquisite corpse. Now how do I get them to kind of look the same? So the skin tone is definitely slightly different in the lighting condition. And so I'm going to take just that layer of the torso, and I'm going to play with its adjustments. And this is like what we were doing with auto color in preview. And the first one I'll always use is levels. This is lights and darks. And the one I can always play with is the mid-range. Does it go lighter or does it go darker? So lighter is off to the left. Darker in the midtones is off to the right. So I'm just going to go slightly off to the left. And then highlights, maybe optimize the histogram a little bit, go a little bit brighter. And then the shadows, maybe optimize those a little bit. So shadows are this black triangle. Highlights are the white or light gray triangle at the edge. You want to contain your histogram, so you have a darkest dark and a lightest light. And we'll get a lot of practice at that. Say OK. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the legs. Image, adjustments, levels. Optimize the histogram. It's pretty good. Then do the same thing with the head. Get them to match as much as they can. Now what's fun about splitting the head in half here is it also allows me to do other kind of transitions that we'll be using later in class. So if I take this torso, which has the bottom jaw, instead of just selecting and erasing like this, I can also be more subtle about it and use the eraser tool and pick a brush that's not so crisp and hard.